Okay, now you're taking me into grounds that I normally don't like to talk about, but you asked, so we're going to get into this here. Someone asked me about Abraxas, and this family member here asked me about Sophia, and they want to know if they are of the same thing. Now, you know, I do real talk real fast, man, and I try to keep everything as simple as possible. So bear with me on this here, because this exists within layers that we're getting ready to talk about. And toward the end, I'm going to have to talk about the ice wall and what's going on over there. Now, when it comes to this thing called Abraxas, it is a frequency. It is a frequency of balance. Had it not been for this energy or this frequency, none of this would exist. Because it was the frequency, it was the energy or the balance of this thing that they call Abraxas that brought forth the divine feminine and the divine masculine, brought them together so that creation could come into existence. This thing that we call the divine intelligence, it would not have become aware of itself had it not been for positive and negative elements coming together. The balance. Do you get that? It's kind of like this thing that we know as love. We giving it the name love, but we really don't know what the name is. One day we'll get around to that. But it is a frequency. It is something that you can feel. It just is. And it too is an attribute of the divine intelligence. But this thing called a Braxton is more like a architect. There are many architects within the divine intelligence, but this is like a major archon or a major architect within the divine intelligence. Do you get that? It is a frequency. Now, Sophia is a frequency as well. It is the frequency that birthed things into existence. And it had the knowledge, and it obtained the knowledge of creating things and bringing things into existence. And when it mastered that, it started to manifest its wisdom. Sophia, the Holy Mother, the wisdom, the wise one. Do we have that part? Okay, now let's continue. Now, throughout time, there has always been beings who would take on the name of certain attributes so they could use it for an egotistical thing so that other beings would look upon them as a god. Because, see, the name of Abraxas is what you would call it is a ultra ancient name. This is a very old name. We once used to use it here on this side of the water. And we had symbols for it as well. I'll dig it up maybe one day. But it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It is an attribute. But getting back to what I was saying, there have been beings who will take on these attributes and to manipulate the people to make themselves seem to be much more powerful than what they truly are. It's just like the character that one may know as Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra took that name from another attribute that exists within the divine intelligence. If you've been rocking with me, you know that I gave you some secret tones. One of the secret tones that I gave you was the tone of Ra. This tone existed within the divine intelligence. This tone is part of our creation. It is not only a tone, it is a tone too of balance, but it is also a tone of activation. Ra. The sunlight coming on. Ra. Activate the light. The sun rays hit the earth and activate the plants. It activates you. But you would have beings who would be like, I am Amun-Ra. And everything that the sun touch, I own. And you are to bow down to me. You worship me as you would the sun. This character, there is a character who exists on the other side of the ice wall. Forgive me for speaking of this. There was a character, or is a character, who exists on the other side of those ice walls. And he took on the name of Abraxas. The same thing that the character Amun-Ra did. Are you following? Are you following? This being has been around for a very long time. It's possible that this being knows how to transfer its consciousness into other bodies. I don't know. But what I do know is that it has lived for quite some time. And it is a descendant of our ancestors. We have the same ancestors. Not the ones that were born, the ones who pretty much just phased themselves into existence. But however, this Braxton character, he exists in physical form. And he controls. He makes major decisions on what goes on within our dome and other domes and some other places. His ancestors knew how to live for long periods of time without it. They just had that ability to do that. You used to could live for a minimum of 300 years. But as they got weaker, they had to start using things that come out of to make themselves live longer. This character that lives across that ice wall, he's in charge of the galactic, he's one of the people in charge of the galactic stock market. If I could say that. But the one across that ice wall, he is the mythos. The one who I told you with the thing that I told you that is a frequency of balance that brought forth the positive and the negative so that we can have atoms that create things. Brought forth the proton, neutron, and the electron. Brought them forth and brought forth those things. That is an actual energy. And that's the best I can do explaining that. I try not to talk about what goes on across that ice wall. You can find yourself in trouble talking about that. But you asked the questions, so I will give it on to you. If there's something that I really don't feel comfortable talking about, I'm just going to tell you straight up. I'm not going to talk about it. But I believe we're mature enough to understand this, and I'm sure you understood what I just said. Man, that was a good one. Peace and blessings. I'm out.